If you have spent the last few years doing all the right things, going to bed at a reasonable hour, cutting the screens, maybe even buying the magnesium gummies and the lavender pillow spray, and you are still waking up at 3 a.m. with your mind racing, still dragging yourself through every afternoon like you are running on fumes, and still being told by your doctor that your labs look completely normal, then this video is going to feel like someone finally switched on a light for you. Because here's what nobody is telling women over 40 about sleep. It is not a willpower problem. It is not a stress problem. Well, not entirely, and it is absolutely not just getting older. What is happening to your sleep right now has a very specific biological explanation, and once you understand it, the fix becomes a whole lot clearer. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what changes in your hormones, I mean specifically which hormones, and how they are quietly dismantling your sleep right now. I'm going to share what the newest research says about sleep and perimenopause, because some of this data is only a couple of years old, and most people haven't heard it yet. I'm going to separate the sleep advice that actually works for women in midlife from the generic stuff that was really designed with a 30-year-old man in mind, and I'm going to give you 5 concrete steps you can take, starting tonight. Not next week, tonight. Okay, so let me start by defining something that I think gets glossed over way too fast in most conversations about women's health, and that is what I call your sleep architecture. Sleep is not just one state that happens while you're unconscious. Your brain cycles through several very distinct stages throughout the night: light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep, which is your dreaming stage, and each one of those stages does something completely different and irreplaceable for your body. Deep sleep is when your body repairs tissue, regulates blood sugar, and consolidates your immune system. REM sleep is when your brain processes emotional memories, solves problems, and essentially does its overnight filing for everything you experience during the day. Now here is where it gets really important for women over 40 specifically, and I want you to put in the comments if this sounds familiar. Are you waking up somewhere between 2 and 4 a.m.? Like almost on a schedule? You're not necessarily woken up by something external, you just wake up. Your mind is immediately going, maybe there's this low hum of anxiety that you can't really pin on anything specific. And then the next hour is you lying there negotiating with your own brain. Yeah, that is not insomnia in the traditional sense. That is a hormone signature, and I'm about to explain exactly what's behind it. So a 2022 review, published in the journal Nature and Science of Sleep, specifically looked at how the hormonal shifts of perimenopause alter sleep architecture. And what they found is that it is not just one hormone doing this, it is a cascade. Estrogen, progesterone, and cortisol are all interacting with your sleep system simultaneously. And as their levels shift and fluctuate in perimenopause, the whole structure of your sleep changes with them. Let's start with progesterone, because I think progesterone is the most underappreciated hormone in this entire conversation. Progesterone has a direct calming effect on the brain. It actually binds to the same receptors in the brain as GABA, which is your main inhibitory neurotransmitter, the one that quiets neural activity and allows you to settle into deep sleep. Progesterone is essentially nature's sleep aid, and here is the part that surprises most people. Progesterone is one of the first hormones to start declining, often years before your periods become irregular at all. So for a lot of women in their late 30s and early 40s, progesterone is already dropping while everything else still looks normal on paper. And you wonder why you suddenly can't sleep the way you used to. Now add estrogen into that picture. Estrogen helps regulate your body temperature, and body temperature is intimately connected to sleep onset and sleep maintenance. Your core body temperature needs to drop slightly for you to fall and stay asleep. When estrogen is fluctuating, not just low but going up and down unpredictably the way it does in perimenopause, your thermostat essentially goes haywire, hence the night sweats, hence waking up drenched and then freezing 5 minutes later. That temperature disruption alone is enough to pull you out of deep sleep and into a lighter stage where waking up becomes much more likely. And then there's cortisol. Your cortisol rhythm is supposed to follow a very clean arc, high in the morning to get you going, tapering through the day, low at night. But as estrogen declines, this cortisol rhythm can become dysregulated. Some women in perimenopause show elevated nighttime cortisol levels, which is your stress response firing at exactly the moment it should be quiet. And that is what wakes you up at 3 a.m., with your heart going a little faster than it should, and your brain immediately jumping to your to-do list. That is cortisol, not just anxiety. Cortisol. Now here is where it gets genuinely exciting, because the science on sleep and hormones has moved really fast in the last 3 years, and there are a few findings I think are important, and that most people are simply not talking about yet. The first is the gut-sleep connection. And I know it can feel like the gut microbiome gets credited for everything these days, but bear with me, because this one is real, and it's specifically relevant to women in midlife. 2023 study in Cell Host and Microbe found that certain gut bacteria produce a precursor to melatonin, your sleep hormone, and that the composition of those bacteria is directly influenced by estrogen levels. So as estrogen declines, the bacterial populations that support melatonin production shrink. Put that together with the fact that melatonin production naturally decreases with age anyway. Some estimates suggest your melatonin output at 55 may be less than half of what it was at 25, and you start to understand why sleep becomes harder to come by even when you're genuinely doing everything right. Now, I want to say something about melatonin supplements here because I get asked about this constantly, and the research is more nuanced than most people realize. The standard over-the-counter dose of melatonin in the US is somewhere between 5 and 10 milligrams, but studies show that the physiologically effective dose for most adults, the dose that actually mimics what your body naturally produces, is somewhere between 0.5 and 1 milligram. So most people are taking 10 times more melatonin than their body would ever produce on its own, which over time can actually disrupt your body's own melatonin signaling rather than support it. If you are currently taking melatonin, put in the comments what dose you're at, because I am willing to bet most of you are taking a lot more than you need. The second finding is about inflammation and sleep, and this one genuinely surprised me when I first read it. A 2024 paper in the journal Menopause tracked inflammatory markers in perimenopausal women alongside their sleep quality data, and what they found is that the relationship is bidirectional. Poor sleep raises inflammation, and elevated inflammation worsens sleep. It's a loop. Women who were in the worst third for sleep quality had significantly higher levels of interleukin-6, that's a key inflammatory marker, and those same women scored measurably worse on cognitive tests the following morning. So that brain fog you're experiencing, it may not just be hormones directly, it may be sleep deprivation driving inflammation that is then impairing your brain function the next day, with the hormonal disruption as the entry point into the whole cycle. And the third thing, and this is something I discovered in my own personal experience, and it really surprised me, is the relationship between blood sugar stability and nighttime waking. So many of us pay attention to blood sugar for weight and energy reasons, but what I hadn't fully connected until I started going through the research was how directly blood sugar dysregulation links to those nighttime cortisol spikes I mentioned. When your blood sugar drops too low during the night, which can happen if you haven't eaten enough complex carbohydrates before bed, or if you've had alcohol, which causes blood sugar to crash, roughly 3 to 4 hours after drinking, your body releases cortisol to bring it back up. And that cortisol spike is what wakes you up. Your body is doing exactly what it is designed to do. It just happens to be doing it at 3 a.m. And what you eat in the evening hours is directly connected to whether that happens. We'll come back to this in the action steps. Okay, so here is something I feel strongly about, and I want to address it directly. The vast majority of sleep advice online, even the well-meaning research-backed stuff, is based on studies done predominantly on younger adults, and disproportionately on men. Some of it is genuinely useful across the board, but some of it is a complete mismatch for what's happening hormonally in a woman over 40. So let me break that down. The standard sleep hygiene basics: dark room, cool temperature, no screens before bed, consistent wake time, these are real, and they matter. I'm not dismissing any of them, but if your progesterone is low, if your cortisol rhythm is dysregulated, if your gut microbiome has shifted, those basics alone are not going to be enough. They create the conditions for good sleep. They don't address the underlying hormonal and metabolic reasons why your sleep is disrupted in the first place. I want to spend a moment on the resistance training point specifically, because this one really surprised me the first time I saw it in the literature. A 2023 meta-analysis in Sleep Medicine Reviews looked at different types of exercise and their effects on sleep quality. And what they found is that resistance training, not yoga, not walking, not cardio, produced the most significant improvements in both sleep onset time and deep sleep duration. The mechanism makes sense when you think about it. Resistance training increases your insulin sensitivity, which stabilizes blood sugar regulation overnight. It also increases the demand for growth hormone, which is released primarily during deep sleep, so your body starts to prioritize and protect that deep sleep stage more. If you are not doing any form of resistance training and sleep is a problem, this is the first thing I would add. Alright, here are your 5 action steps. These are practical, sequenced in order of impact, and you can realistically start all 5 of them before the end of this week. 1. Run a 7-day sleep audit, but a different kind. For the next 7 days, I want you to keep a 3-question sleep log. It takes about 90 seconds each morning. Question 1. Did you wake up during the night, and if so, around what time? Question 2. What did you eat in the 3 hours before bed? Question 3. Did you have any alcohol? That's it. It sounds overly simple, but after 7 days, patterns become very clear. Most people find that their worst nights cluster around specific food or alcohol patterns in the evening. And once you can see the pattern, you can actually do something about it. You do not need an expensive sleep tracker for this. A notes app on your phone works perfectly. 2. Get morning light within 30 minutes of waking. This is the single highest leverage habit change for sleep that most people consistently overlook, and it costs nothing. Within 30 minutes of waking, get outside and get natural light into your eyes, not through a window, actual outdoor light. Even on a cloudy day, outdoor light is dramatically brighter than indoor light and sends a much stronger signal. What this does is give your brain's master clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, a clear and strong day begins now signal. That sets a biological timer. Roughly 14 to 16 hours later, your brain will begin producing melatonin. It is the most reliable way to shift when your melatonin arrives, which matters enormously if you're lying awake for a long time before feeling sleepy or waking too early. If you do one thing from this video, let it be this one. 3. Add complex carbohydrates to your evening meal. Remember the blood sugar connection. When glucose drops overnight, cortisol rises to compensate, and that is what wakes you up. The fix is not a massive dinner right before bed. It's making sure your last meal of the day includes a moderate amount of slow-digesting complex carbohydrates. Think sweet potato, lentils, oats, chickpeas, or beans. These slow-release carbohydrates provide a steady supply of glucose through the night, preventing that cortisol trigger. They also raise serotonin levels in the brain, which is a precursor to melatonin, so you're addressing the blood sugar problem and the melatonin problem simultaneously. I started having a small bowl of oats with seeds and berries about 2 hours before bed, and the improvement in my sleep continuity was noticeable within the first week. So put in the comments, are you currently eating anything in the evening, or are you going to bed on empty? 4. Add resistance training even just twice a week. You don't need a gym, you don't need equipment. Bodyweight squats, push-ups, lunges, and resistance bands are enough to create the metabolic and hormonal effects that improve sleep quality. Start with 2 sessions a week, 20 to 30 minutes each. The important thing is to schedule these sessions in the morning or early afternoon. Evening resistance training can raise both cortisol and core body temperature close to bedtime, which is exactly the opposite of what we want. And if you're already exercising regularly, but primarily doing cardio, running, spinning, walking, consider swapping one of those sessions for resistance work. Your deep sleep duration is likely to improve within a few weeks. 5. Cool your sleep environment strategically. This sounds small, but the research is solid. Your core body temperature needs to drop by about 1 to 2 degrees to initiate and maintain deep sleep. In younger adults with stable estrogen, this thermoregulation is relatively automatic. In perimenopausal and menopausal women, it is not, and we have to help it along externally. The research-supported sweet spot for bedroom temperature is between 65 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 18 to 19 Celsius. If you share a bed and your partner runs cold, look into a cooling mattress pad just on your side. And here's a trick that surprises people. Taking a warm bath or shower about 90 minutes before bed actually helps. When you get out, your body temperature drops quickly in response to the cooler air, which accelerates sleep onset. A 2019 meta-analysis in Sleep Medicine Reviews found this warm bath protocol reduced time to fall asleep by an average of about 10 minutes, which when you're lying there at 11 p.m. watching the ceiling, 10 minutes is genuinely meaningful. So here is what I want you to take away from all of this. Struggling with sleep after 40 is not a character flaw, it is not a discipline issue. It is not just stress or getting older in some vague, unavoidable way. There are specific, nameable, biological reasons why this is happening: progesterone declining and taking your GABA support with it, cortisol rhythms shifting, melatonin production dropping, blood sugar becoming harder to regulate through the night, and there are specific, practical things you can do about every single one of them. I want to hear from you in the comments. Which of these 5 steps are you going to try first? Because I always find it genuinely helpful to hear what resonates. It shapes a lot of what I cover next. And if the 3 a.m. waking thing is your experience, tell me that in the comments too. You are not alone in it. Not even close.